Hello and welcome to Jolie Living. We're not in the kitchen today. We're in the shop and we're making a raised bed for a friend of the family. We're using 2x6 redwood construction and a special treatment to the wood that you'll see later. For the raised bed project, Helen had given me a sketch that looked a lot like this drawing here. I drew it up to be sure I was doing what she had envisioned, and what it was a 2x6 construction with some decorative and structural angles on the corners, and is about just over 12 feet long by 3 feet wide, as you can see here. And for the materials, we had 9 12-foot long 2x6s, one 10-foot long 2x6, two 8-foot long 2x4s, and one 50-inch long piece of 3-inch by 3-inch angle iron that was then cut off at 3-inch lengths to make these individual corners. And then we were going to rest the bed on bricks. Helen and Carl found bricks at a local store and had the bricks all laid out when we delivered the raised bed, and it sat right on it. So if you wanted to build the exact thing, here are the dimensions, but you can adjust any of these dimensions to make it fit your setup. I'll just rotate it here just a little bit so you can kind of see down inside. I didn't fill in all of the boards in between just to kind of save on weight. And what I actually did do is I did this one and then the one at the bottom. And the 2x4s help tie all the layers together. You do want, to hold, being 12 feet long, it's a bit of force with all that dirt inside the center piece. So it's good to have the bottom layers tied from this side to the other long side. But this is how it all started. It's kind of fun. Oh, and I'm using Google SketchUp. Don't know if everybody has used it before. It's a free Google app. It's nice when you need to, we can draw anything on paper, and you can draw it to scale even. And you can even draw in 3D, but it's fairly easy to draw in 3 dimensions here, and it helps me and my wife visualize things before we go through the effort of building it. So good luck. When you're picking out your lumber, take your time. You're trying to get the straightest pieces you can, or at least the pieces that have the straightest amount of wood for your project. If it has a bow along the wider surface, depending on what you're doing, if it's like decking, you can hold that down as you're screwing. You're just putting weight down, and you can, between the screws and weight out ahead of the screws, you can hold a bow down. If it has a curve along the edge, it's pretty much you're not going to be able to take that out. But if maybe you're taking some large board and you're cutting it up into a bunch of pieces, it can still work for you. Ideally, you want all straight boards, but those are so hard to come by. So just think about your project. Like this board, I was culling through my pile. I already got the best that I could with what was available, and now I'm culling through that. And these are my shortest boards. They're 3 foot. So I'm finding the curves that I can live with and cutting those down into minimal pieces. And these shorter lengths will be plenty straight. Whereas if it was one long board, I might have to do a bit more work with it. So just think of those things when you're at the lumber store. I'll be using some power tools for this project, but all of this can be done with hand tools. If you have a good wood crosscut saw, you can make your cuts in the wood pretty easily. We're doing some decorative slash structural angles for the corners that you can cut with a hacksaw or with an inexpensive power tool, a cutoff grinder. It's just a 4-inch disc grinder that you can make some pretty good cuts with those. Save you quite a bit of time, but it's a fairly easy project. I already showed you the layout and the dimensions, so I think we'll get started. If you were to use a conventional crosscut saw, you take something like this. You use a speed square to draw you a nice square line on the wood, and you clamp your board down or have somebody hold it for you, and you would just take your time cutting it. You have the line to follow, but if you're forcing it and kind of overexerting yourself in the saw, you will veer off, and your cuts won't turn out as square. So I advise just a nice smooth cutting action, and you'll get a good result. And with all these things, you always measure twice and cut once. Today we're using a radial arm saw for all of our cuts. It'll make the job quick and easy. If you had a miter saw, a powered miter saw, or a compound mitered saw, that would work just fine. Just anything to speed up the process, I guess. Since we're using this, we have a bunch of 3-foot cuts to make here. I have made a stop. So basically created a jig that all I gotta do is slide the board in, cut. Slide the board in again, cut. And all the boards will be the same length. It's something my dad taught me. It's very good for production and consistency. I'm gonna be sure, don't forget safety, put your safety glasses on. I'm gonna go ahead and make the first cut. There's our first board. We'll just check it before we just go next. 3 feet on the dot. Slide this puppy into the next spot. And away we go. All right, now we're going to cut the angles for the corners of our bed. We decided to use 3-inch by 3-inch angle iron, and then we're cutting it off at 3 inches. So we'll have these 3-inch squares on all the corners. They end up being decorative as well as structural, giving you some extra support on your corners. As I mentioned earlier, you could use a good old hacksaw. You could possibly find some thinner. This is 3/16 inch steel. It takes some elbow grease and some patience to make all these. It's 16 corners for the project the way we're doing it. You know, if you wanted, you could do longer chunks and only need about 4 cuts just to do your corner. To do your corners. It's just use your imagination. Another thing, like I mentioned earlier, fairly inexpensive tool would be an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. If you, of course, wearing safety glasses and everything, you lay out a nice square mark on here. I don't want to mark where I'm not going to cut really, but you'd be surprised, especially if you rest your your hand against something firm, how straight of a line you can cut. This will be much quicker than a hacksaw, and give you a nice result. And any place that your cut isn't great, you can then put on a grinding wheel and even things out. So that's pretty good. But today I'm actually going to use a powered bandsaw, metal cutting bandsaw. And what's nice is I can even set up a stop and just keep moving through them. All right, since our angle iron has a rounded inside corner, we need to take off the corner of our outside 2x6s. So I've marked the center and marked the width of our 3-inch piece of angle iron, and you could remove this with a file, you know, a rasp. A router would probably be the fanciest method, but what we're going to use is this oscillating tool. Just has a little saw bit on the end, and it gets the job done quick and good enough for this, because all we're going to do is cover it up. All we're trying to do is remove this, you know, cut this down to a 45 to so that it'll fit the rounded corner. All right, now this is where the sounds is going to blow out. Now you can see we have a good fit. Otherwise, it fits like this. You can't ever get it close enough. So that's what we were improving the fit on. Had a helper show up. It's always good when the master is in town.
Cheap labor.
Cheap labor. But also my production goes up more than 100%. He's efficient. So after cutting the angles, we had 16 of those to cut. Got them cut. We spent a little bit of time on the grinder cleaning up the edges. We're just taking off the sharp edges. And then on the inside, you pretty much have to use a file. Or you could put a grinding type bit on your angle grinder. But we're getting those cleaned up. Then all we have to do is drill 64 holes in these 16 pieces of angle iron. But we're getting close to full assembly. But it's funny, just anytime there's extra help, you know, how quick the production just goes up so much.
It goes up a lot.
It's great. I love it. So I better quit talking and do something. Now it's time to drill the holes in our angle corner pieces. And since we actually have, like I said a little bit ago, we have 64 holes to drill, and we want them in the same spot on all the pieces. Dad put together a nice jig for us. He just took some scrap 4x4, some scrap 1x, and got it set up and clamped it to the table. We're using the drill press. We knew we wanted our holes to be 1/2 of an inch in from the outside edge, and well, from both the outside edges. So the center of these holes are 1/2 inch in by 1/2 inch in, and we wanted it one on the other corner the same way. So we set it up to where you just slide your piece on, bring it up next to this stop, drill your hole, then you scoot it over to the other stop, drill your hole. Then you can just flip the whole piece over and repeat. So he boosted production for us right there real quick. But now I'll just show you drilling a hole. So after drilling all the holes, the size to fit the screw through, then we're coming back through with a larger bit and just countersinking at the surface so that our screw will set flush. So that it'll set in flush like that. And now we'll just do that to all of them. And we're going to put a quick coat of spar urethane on these. The homeowner we're making this for, they decided they want the industrial look. So we're just gonna, it'll be clear. You'll just see right through it, and it'll look like the raw metal straight from the mill. But in most environments, you would want to put something on there. So we'll give it a little spray. We're gonna put probably just one coat on the inside. Then I'll try to put 2 on the outside. Goes on quick. After cutting all the boards to the desired dimension, we, for this particular project, we have applied what we're calling a Sugi inspired technique to the wood. We burned it as a preservation method, as well as afterwards putting on a coat of linseed oil. But there'll be a link to the video on how we did the Shou type procedure. There'll be a link up above. But so now we have all the boards ready to assemble. I brought them up to the most level spot I could find, and it is our garage floor. Brought everything up in the back of the truck from the other side, and now we have, these are, well, I showed you the dimensions at the beginning. We are doing a 12-foot by 3-foot bed. So I'm going to start screwing these together, and I'll show you how I do it. For assembly, I'm using screws. You can use a hammer and nails, not a problem. Screws have a little bit better holding power, a little less likely of splitting out the end of a board as you go in. But so what I like to do is I'm pre-drilling my end board, and we're just screwing the short end board into the end of the long boards. So I pre-drilled just this end board and go ahead and get my screws in there to where they're almost poking out, so it'll be ready when it comes time to screw it in the end. Especially when you're doing this by yourself and you don't have somebody else holding the boards for you. And you can do it just with any type of drill. I like to have a cordless is most handy, of course, but cords are just fine. And even more handy is I like to have a drill and then actually an impact driver with a this sliding tip, this regular screwdriver bit to fit the type of screws that you have, and this tip that slides over it. That way it helps keep you on the screw, keeps you centered, and that just it slides up as you get to the end. So it's just a little tool that helps keep you on your screw. But oh, and this is an impact, so it makes driving the screw even easier. And with all this, you're going to do your best to just make everything flush vertically and along the sides. And you know, this is a garden bed, so it's not like a piece of furniture, but you do want to keep it as clean as you can. So I can tell I have to pick this one up a bit. It's always nice when you have somebody helping hold, but if you don't, you can still do it just fine. And that sound is the sound of the impact. It takes less force pushing against the screw to go in, so you're less likely to strip, and it's just a lot easier, less pressure to drive it in. I use short bursts, just because I don't know where I am, how close to the end, so just short little bursts even keeps it engaged. And boy, when I found out about those, I just thought they were the greatest invention ever. Because sometimes when you're trying to drive screws with a drill, you have to get your shoulder into it and really put a lot of pressure. So the impact driver is really nice. Working on the third layer now, and just a reminder, if you are doing the exact same design with the angle iron on the corners and you notched out the edges like I did earlier in the video, be sure and keep those notches on the outside so that they will work as planned for the angle iron. You can just kind of see a profile there of the notches for the 3 boards. All right, here we are. We're tying the 4 different layers together with a 2x4, and you can see the screws still sticking out there. We're putting 2 screws through the 2x4 into the 2x6, and we got it squared up with a framing square, and we're going to do that in all 4 corners of this inner box, and then on the 4 corners on the outer part of the box. And the squareness, it could be eyeball if this is just a local garden project, but this one's for somebody else. We want it to be as square as possible. Our outer corner pieces, we screw all the way through to the inner 2x4 from both sides. And this upper bracket, yeah, it's hard to, you can see it pretty good there, the black and the black. So we actually used 3-inch screws into the edge and 2.5-inch screws into the flat side of the 2x4. And there was a bit of concern of hitting the screws that came through the edge of the 2x6. We occasionally would hit one, but we drill a pilot hole through the 2x6, and if we encountered that screw, just kind of drilled on through it so that the screw could make its way through. But a little bit better planning ahead of time, and you could have offset everything. But everything wasn't perfectly random, and there were some intersections. And this top one, we're leaving it not all the way through to the 2x4 so that we can pick off this 3rd layer and not have to carry the whole thing when we transport it. So otherwise, we'll have it almost completely assembled before we take it to its final destination. And Helen did a great job of building the footing. Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that.
Wow.
Putting the final layer on.
Final layer.
Oh my goodness. Just like it was designed.
Okay, you're gonna get your dad going. Bzz, bzz, bzz.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. That looked good.
I'd like to thank Helen for coming up with this
fun project idea, as well as her partner Carl, my wife Rebecca, my dad Charlie, and Paul for this great music that's playing in the background. That's about all for now. Thanks for joining us at Jolie Living. Please subscribe and like.